And here we are, church, 4 years in. It's amazing. It just really is. Especially when you consider how we started. But before I start, I have asked the team, it's not like they didn't have 5,000 things to do today, but I asked them to also reactivate Slido. So if you have questions during the lesson, or if you just want to send us a happy birthday note via Slido, you can do that. And if you don't have the app, it is such a tiny app. It downloads quickly, SLIDO. You download it, and the code is always our Safe Harbor Church, just OSHC, and pops you right in, all right? And we'll answer the questions later, if any come in. Welcome to a special gathering of our Safe Harbor Church. We take one Sunday a year to celebrate our community. And our community, we always remember, are 99.9% through the lens of a camera. And they see us on Vimeo, they see us on YouTube, they see us on X and Rumble now. They see us on our Facebook page, or they link into us through our website. But they come from all over. And it makes sense to put that celebration at this time of year, when in America, we're heading toward an official holiday called Thanksgiving. We place it early in the month because we don't want to get in the way of family gatherings. In our little skeleton crew, if one family's gone, that's a problem. So we tend to try to make things easy for all of our families. It all started right here. I sat on that stool, iPhone, and a tripod. It was a stormy Wednesday night. Dave Casserly was upstairs frantically furiously trying to keep us online because YouTube was off for half the nation, right during the middle of our introduction and our beginning. It knocked us off the air. It was inauspicious, to say the least, but here we are trying something completely new. Here we are we're unsure how long this will last. Most people said it'll last until COVID's over, and then everybody will go back to normal. Now we found that it's a new normal. And in fact, it keeps changing, and more people are doing church in a different way now. 4 years ago, it's clear we hit a seam. We filled a real need. So I'm going to throw some numbers at you and then explain why we're talking about numbers. One iPhone, one tripod, one man with a few helpers trying to keep us on the air, and a whole bunch of people who supported us via email and text. Now we have 4 cameras, a video switcher. Dave wrote this. I don't know what these things are. We have 4 cameras, a video switcher, hardware streaming encoder, 3 computers, and a soundboard, all run by 5 to 6 people. We have over 3,200 followers on the church Facebook site. My personal has about 8,000 followers. We have over 4,900 subscribers on YouTube. In fact, that's gone up today. I think it's 4,920. We're just 80 away. Come on, folk. You can do this. Over 1,000 people get our newsletter every week. If you don't get our newsletter, write us at info@oursafeharbor.com. You get one a week. We do not shell people with email, so it's not going to spam you up there. We have posted well over 1,000 videos in 4 years. Sundays, Mondays, Wednesdays, and then often Voices on Friday. We post as well on X now, which is a growing, it's the #1 news source in America and most of Europe. So we decided, why don't we put it up there? And that's growing. Put it on Rumble. It's always been on Vimeo. If you've never tried Vimeo, I think the video quality is a little better. But however you do it, they don't count as many counts as YouTube does, so that's all right. We have views from 37 nations and all U.S. states, although to be honest, we're concentrated in about 15 states and about 5 countries that we know of because they check in. Here's the thing. We don't know who's watching. We just know numbers. I recently was in a Culver's. That's an American, mainly a northern hamburger thing, which has come down to the south. A bunch of teenagers came in. It's obvious that the school lunch crowd, the seniors, had come in. And as I'm just waiting on my order, a young man comes over and he goes, "Are you Patrick Mead?" I've always found that that can go either way. But I said, "Yes." And he said, "I watch you. We watch your videos." I have no idea how this fella found them, why a young person would be doing this, but I'm finding more and more young people doing this. I have young people that hold up their phones and say, "We've got all your lessons on our..." So we've hit a seam somehow. But we've also hit it with a bunch of old folk and old folk. And by the way, my definition of old folk just changed dramatically. And so when I talk old, I'm talking old here. I'm talking, they got one leg in Jesus' waiting room. And they love us too. And so it's amazing. I was stopped in Walmart by a guy that just stared at me, and then he grinned. That also could go a variety of ways. And he said, "You don't know me, but I know you." And again, not terribly comforting. But then he said, "We watch you." And he called his wife over. And we don't know you're watching unless you let us know. But again, we think we're concentrated in 15 states and 5 countries. Let us know if we're wrong. We have entered deep into the prison system, especially into Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola, as it's generally known. We now have 84 men who get our notes every week, and we are in process of becoming an official church there, if we can get past some hurdles to where these men can actually gather every week and worship together and actually watch the sermon via DVD. Now, the death row guys still can't do that, but the others can. So pray for that. Why are we talking about the numbers? Well, numbers tell part of the story, but not the whole story. Let me explain by using an illustration most of us know if we're above a certain age, because it used to be all the rage to buy paint by numbers. And you would buy a pastoral scene or a famous painting, something by Raphael or Rubens or perhaps Da Vinci, and there'd be it all was in little sections and it had numbers. And if it said 21, you went to find a little pot of paint that was 21, and you did that. And then you would go through, and when you were done, you would have nothing like the original. But when you were done painting by numbers, you understood what you were looking at. It's rather like Lego, I found, has a Lego build by number of the Mona Lisa. It has 1,503 pieces. I've seen a completed one. It's not close to the Mona Lisa. But when you look at it, you know Mona Lisa. Now that's the thing. By the same way, telling the story of what God does with our gifts by numbers paints a picture, but it doesn't reveal the whole glory of God if we just focus on the numbers. Jesus chose 12 apostles. It's good to focus on that number for a while. They were not men of power, education, or renown. In fact, their accents were so thick that every time they spoke, other people said, "Aren't these men unlearned and ignorant?" And yet, look what happened. They weren't trained rabbis. They weren't community leaders. Yet these 12 men would start the spread of the gospel. They would start it. We don't know what we're starting here. We don't know what you're starting here. You don't know. Only God knows the end of the story. The apostles' lives were not long, except for that of John. The rest died early in their ministries, but the effect of their ministries still continue. North Africa, Syria, Turkey, the Republic of Georgia, all the way to India in the east to Spain in the west were touched by apostles. Just 12 regular, flawed men. 11, if you take out Judas, and we don't know much about what Matthias did. Thomas made it all the way to India, and there are still Christians there that are known as Thomist Christians from all of that time ago. Who knew? If you focus on the number or the men themselves, it is impressive, but it doesn't give you the whole picture, the perfect picture of God. To see God at work, you have to pull back. You have to see what happened with the work those men and many holy women left behind. We're still here. 2,000 plus years later, we're still here. starting with that unlearned and ignorant group of 12 and Jesus. That's the whole point. And Jesus. Because that takes our paint by numbers and turns it into art. How about 5 loaves and 2 fishes? We know that story. If you're a church person, you know that story because it's one of the favorite ones of Jesus feeding 5,000 with just 5 loaves and 2 fishes. That's not an impressive amount of food. But what Jesus did with them is still being talked about today. When what we have is placed into God's hands, He can make something special with it. I love the story of the feeding of the 5,000 for many reasons, but one of them is the unspoken about humor in it. Whenever the apostles come to Jesus and say, you're going to need to wrap this up. We got 5,000 people here. They're hungry. And there's no restaurants around. They're going to have to go back home to eat. And He says, give them something to eat. 12 unemployed guys. They've been walking around with Jesus for a year or so. He says, just feed them. So they go around looking for food. Only one boy has a lunch. His mama packed it for him. Maybe in a pre-modern era Tupperware, a Longaberger basket or something of that sort. And just imagine this. You got 5,000 hungry guys, and then Jesus' posse comes over and goes, you got some food. And you're just a kid. Now the Bible, I've seen the paintings where the little boy graciously offers it to Jesus. The Bible says they took the boy with the food. I had a feeling he's kind of wrapped around it at this stage. And yet then Jesus looks at the little bit of food and tells the apostles, line them up. Would you have lined them up? Or would you have said, Jesus, would you like to count again? 4 years ago, I was one of those that wasn't sure it was that we should line people up. 4 years ago, I was thinking, everybody keeps saying, give us 3 months, give us 3 months. This won't last long. I am a man whose faith is not all that deep, and God has to keep whacking me in the head saying, look. And the patience of God is amazing because when He whacks you in the head, it's usually with a blessing, not a curse. And therefore, it's all right to be led by God. What we have put in His hands does more than we can imagine. In fact, that includes you at home that are one person on a couch that have been watching for maybe all 4 years. And you're thinking, well, I haven't done much. Have you loved anyone, fed anyone, clothed anyone, visited anyone, cared for anyone in prison? Have you made somebody's day better? Have you shone like the light of Christ in the smallest of ways anytime? Then you have mattered, and God has taken that and done far more with it than you'll ever know. I meet people that say that they are in ministry or that they changed their life now and they do a job in charity because of something I said when we've never met. But I gave a little talk somewhere, someplace, and I'll tell you that those little talks aren't that good. Sometimes I'll drive away going, I'm going to drive faster. This was not good. I didn't accomplish anything. And then later find that God did something. One of my favorite stories, and I'll do it quickly, is I preached the worst sermon ever. Now, it wasn't worse doctrinally, although I imagine if I went back and looked at it now, I'd cringe. But I mean, it just didn't flow. It just didn't. This was a lead turkey. It was not going to fly, no matter how many times I threw it in the air. Even if I emphasized a point, I realized I don't really have one. And I finally didn't even wrap it up. I just quit, caught the song leader in that tribe that you always close with the song leader. You get people up on their feet, and the song leader got up. He was a little surprised. So he got up and hit his little mouth cookie that you blow on with a note, and then sang a song that led the song. And a lady came forward. And I was thinking, what in the world? She sat, I sat. I said, why'd you come forward today? And she goes, well, I want to be baptized. Well, I couldn't leave it alone. So I said, why? And she said, well, the things you said today just really touched my heart. I couldn't let that go either. So I said, can you give me an example of one of those. My wife says if I see a loose thread, somebody's going to lose a sweater. So can you give me an example? And she gave me several things. I didn't say any of those. I don't know what she heard. I don't know what God did. But I stood up, and then God did what God did. You one person on a couch, you've already done more for God than you will ever know, because he took what you did, and he did something great with it. Gifts given to our safe harbor. Those of you that give, whether it's $5 or maybe you've made a special contributions in the thousands, you have fed and clothed countless people through our partners. GraceWorks, One Generation Away, Lifeline, and many others. Babies have been saved from the abortion mill. But more than that, I often see it. I saw it yesterday on X. People saying they're only pro-life until the baby's born. Then they ignore it. Lifeline and others that we work with, no. These babies are clothed, fed, cared for. The mamas are given supplies, diapers, formulas, cribs, and community. No, we're not just pro-life until the baby is born. Speaking of numbers, in a nation where there were 625,000 abortions last year alone, and where major political parties have called for abortion on demand up to the moment of birth, we remain staunchly pro-life before and after birth. We will invest in their lives as long as they are alive. There are 8 states in America where there are no restrictions on abortion up to the moment of birth. And there are more than one where if a baby, you tried to abort it and it remained alive, you are not to give it any care and let it die. We don't do that. But we're pro-life after as well. Our friends at Lifeline in Missouri, I'm heading up there this week, Lord willing, to be at their annual dinner. They're a sterling example of a commitment to aftercare. But we're also pro-life in prisons. We don't want these people to be killed. We don't want them to die neglected in. I visited with a man 3 weeks ago, I guess now, who is 77 years old and who has been in prison there for over 53 years. I got an email from him last night that his parole board hearing has been canceled. The next one has been scheduled for, and this is not a typo, 2057. In other words, no, you're going to die here. What do? We email, we go down and visit. It's a long road down there, but I go down every 6 to 7 weeks, and I don't go as often as other members of our safe harbor who got me involved in this go. We're pro-life there too. So if you thought I was dinging the Democrats and backing the Republicans, please understand we are equal opportunity offenders when it comes to life. We want to take care of people. We want people who have been reformed to get out. God chose one family, Abraham. Have you read the story? Not the hagiographies, the saintly stories, but rather the real book. God told him, through you, all nations of the earth will be blessed. It seems insufficient to choose one family to bless all nations, doesn't it? One person on a couch. What do we have today? 70-something in this room? Especially that family had problems, real problems. And yet, God is still blessing us through Abraham today. And he will, at the end of all things, bless all nations, kindreds, tribes, and tongues. They will all be welcomed into eternity. And it started with one family. Never downplay what is in your pocket. Never downplay what kind of family you have. Never think that you've got nothing to give because of your financial, social, marital, or spiritual condition. If it's given to God, whatever you give him, a moment, a nickel, a smile, a movement, he will do great things with your gift and with your life. Jesus said that God would not forget you giving even a single drink of water to someone. Think of that. I preached a sermon like that once as I was traveling through a place, and I was invited to dinner at lunch at a person's home, and so I went. And their wee toddler came up to me. He'd been listening, evidently, with a little plastic cup, water. And I took it, and I was grateful, and then I started thinking, what source of water can he reach? So I'd like to say that, like in the movies and such, that I poured it into a plant, but there was no plant available. I didn't drink it either, but you make the yum yum noises. You do what you can do, and pray that God kills whatever you've just ingested. But if he won't forget one drink of water, he won't forget this. Not a single glass. We know what he thinks of such simple things in Matthew 25. Come on in. Why? We're not worthy. Yeah, you are. You clothed people. You fed people. You visited the prisons. And they don't even remember it. We did that? We don't remember doing that. He said, you did it. By the way, when I find a concentration of members in any particular area, I call them a cluster, like 5 people perhaps or more. I try to get to them. It can take sometimes driving 2 days to get to their city, and people that give here pay for that. They pay for my petrol. It's gas to you. They pay for me, to be able to stay in a hotel and to have a central meeting place. We send out 12 to 40 emails to the people in the area saying, is this a good time? Would this day work? I'm going to be at this hotel from these hours. Sometimes we fill up the hotel meeting areas. Absolutely pack them. Other times, a handful show up. It is worth it. I've never regretted going to an area, even if only 1 or 2 actually show up. They are important to God, and their effort is not overlooked in heaven. God will take it. He will do something with that gathering. How do I know? I see his record in history. I see his record in the history of our Safe Harbor Church. We know we're small and feeble in the eyes of the world, but he's painting a picture that is far more beautiful and stunning than the one we see, because you see, we're painting by numbers, but he is a master artist. Changes will always come. Our soundstage, this lovely place that we've been gifted for the last 4 years, it's up for sale. Our hosts are facing some financial issues that require the sale of this. We support them entirely because, frankly, we love them. And we have never found people more generous, kind, open, and loving than the people that have hosted us here for 4 years. I always feel awkward because to get here, you don't go through the door soundstage. You walk into their living room. They gave us keys. They gave us the codes. We're not going to share those. We come in all hours because sometimes we need to record something special and sometimes we need to work on something. I don't usually come in to work on something, but Dave and John come in for that. And it's amazing how gracious they have been to us. But we think selling this home is the right move for them. We're all for it. We're praying for that. That does not bother us because we know what God can do with one phone and one tripod. We have more than that now. We have equipment that we've already gotten ready so that we can move it, set it up, wherever we need to be. Now, we don't have plans to go get millions into debt and build another building just like all the other buildings in our city. It could be that somebody gifts us a building. It could be that somebody, if they gift us land, I'm going to say, well, thanks, we'll put a tent maybe, because again, that takes millions, and we like to put money into people's hands who are hungry, hurting, hurricane victims and like, rather than putting it into an edifice for us. So we're looking, we have a plan A, B, C, D, all the way to probably double L.2. We will consider whatever God puts ahead in front of us. If it happens, it happens. Whatever God supplies, he will supply. Let me give you another number, because people ask. Next month, I turn 68. I know, I'm stunned as well. I look in the mirror and I go, impossible. But then someone takes a picture of me and I realize my mirror is lying. At my former church, I told them I wanted to work until I was 70 and then stop being the pulpit minister and ease away while letting others take the pulpit and work in mentorship and support. We even looked for who could come along and fill my shoes when that time came. Well, this is different now. I want to spend the rest of my life speaking of the love of God, freedom of God, grace of God, and to correct the harsh, narrow, legalistic doctrines of my youth, and to also open up, be an icebreaker so that the ships behind me can sail a little bit more smoothly, a little bit more safely. So my plan is, I'm going to keep going till my brain or my body give out. My hope is that they'll both give out at the same time. God will throw the switch and I'll see Jesus. But until then, I'm going to continue this work. As long as God gives me the brain, the body, and as long as people fund it, we plan to continue it. Now, we do plan to bring in other ministers from time to time, but instead of bringing them in, we can go to them. And we can sit with them, and they can preach together. We can talk and record 4 or 5 sermons, and then I'll go to another place. And to work those voices in so that when the day comes, as inevitably it will come, that my brain or my body do give out, then you've already heard the voices that know what we teach, that are not going to bring you back into the rules and the checkbox religion, but rather keep you focused, turning your eyes, as it were, upon Jesus. That's what we want to do. Thank you for letting it be possible. So, those of you that have been giving, yeah, it comes back to numbers. But it's not just the giving of dollars. It is also the emails that encourage us. It is the text, it is the cards, the calls that we get to encourage us. That is huge. We pass those around. We share those. They're important to us. Those make a difference that you don't even know. There are loaves and fishes that spread and you don't even know. They refresh us. They keep us moving forward. Check-ins are shots in the arm. My wife will say, did you see this name they checked in? Did you see this name they checked in? It might be the Utleys in Texas. It might be the Lores up in West Virginia. It might be our friends in Colorado. It might be people, Epaphras Malale, who's watching this right now. Hi, Epaphras, who's in Tanzania and leads a school of preaching. Whoever they are, wow, thank you. Just the checking in makes us so happy. 1,000+ videos, more than 200 live services right here, guys. It's amazing. It means that there aren't very many days off. We can never coast, but with the support of all of you and with God, this will continue. For we serve the master artist who can take our small, unimpressive numbers and change the world. God bless all of you, and happy birthday.